Hey y'all, what's going on? Jags Money here once again. Finally doing another video. I know it's been like fucking months or something, but we're finally getting back to doing more PM stuff now that I'm feeling a little bit more motivated at the time. But we're gonna keep talking about something that's been getting thrown around for the last couple weeks in the community, and it's obviously gonna be auto L cancel by the name of the video, I'm pretty sure. It's something that's been going around for years at this point, on and off. And I've had my own opinion on it for the past couple years as well. And I kind of want to just go over everything for people to know my own stance, know both sides, what people points are bringing up, and kind of just what the general discussion's about if you're kind of new to everything. So, first thing I want to talk about is what is auto L canceling. Obviously, the name kind of gives it away, but to go into a little bit more detail, if you don't even know some of the minor stuff, L canceling is obviously a mechanic present in Melee that was put into Project M in its own way, where if you press a shoulder button or a shield button 7 frames or less before you hit the ground doing an aerial attack, you will reduce the end lag of that move by half, right? And the idea about auto L cancel is to obviously make that happen automatically, is to have it happen on its own, where you don't need to press the shoulder button. Your lag from aerials will be cut in half regardless, right? That has been the idea, and it's been a setting in the game for a while now. Pretty sure it was in 3.6. I might be wrong, but I'm fairly certain it was. And it is obviously one in P+ now, and it's fairly common for people to use it and talk about it at their tournaments or whatever. So, some questions that people usually have in regards to this question if they're first hearing it for the first time is, can you still L cancel with auto L cancel turned on? The answer is yes. Yes, you can. You can still L cancel just like you normally would if it's part of your muscle memory, and it shouldn't affect most of your gameplay, especially if you're light pressing your triggers instead of hard pressing. You won't get locked out of tech windows and things like that. So no, this shouldn't affect anything. You can still L cancel. You'll still get the nice white flash if you like that, and it won't change anything for you personally, right? For the most part, in terms of your own inputs, right? The second question, doesn't this make technical characters just better, like Fox, Falco, Wolf, all that kind of stuff? I will get to that later on. It's a little bit more nuanced than if it makes them better. I think there's a different question, but you will get to that later on in the video. The third one, and the last one I'm going to go over for questions is, isn't the game balanced around L canceling, having it be done by the person doing it? Like you're supposed to, it's balanced around the fact that you have to do it, right? In essence, yes, this has been said by dev members before, to me personally, and obviously just in general, that the game was balanced around not having auto L canceling. But once again, it's a more nuanced question that I don't really, that a lot of the arguments for and against it kind of negate that point anyway. So it's not really a huge deal. It is something that the dev team has said before, and obviously since, you know, the tournaments were assumed to be played with it off, that's kind of what they balanced the game around. But, and obviously for PM 3.6 and for before, obviously it was balanced around that, because obviously auto L canceling was never really a big deal. But, so it's not a huge deal, right? We'll get into some of this stuff in my next couple sections here. And the first thing I want to go over is the arguments for using auto L canceling and having it on at tournaments. And obviously this includes all tournaments, right? This includes like Riptide coming up, right? That's what brought it up originally. First thing that people usually say in regards to positive points around auto L canceling, and the one that really gets most people going, is that it brings in players due to the lower skill floor while not affecting the experienced players in general, right? And that really gets people excited. That gets people ready to go. That gets new players especially excited to play the game, because now they can be on even footing without having to practice this mechanic that they may or may not enjoy doing, right? That's been the one that's probably the most repeated point. And obviously, because new players means the scene grows, that's obviously a big point for our community, is getting more people playing the game and all that stuff. So obviously, it's the biggest factor and the one you're going to hear the most. Second one is the mechanic is pointless. L canceling is not a mechanic that engages you in a meaningful, thought-provoking way, at least in this game. In Melee, you have some hit lag on shield and things like that can affect the timing based on how early or late you hit someone or their shield, whereas in this game there's a buffer added for that to make it easier, so that's not really a thing. So the mechanic is pretty dumbed down in terms of what kind of nuance there is to it, and obviously the idea that you get locked out of tech windows and stuff, you just light press it, and that obviously removes that. I'm going to get farther into this later on in the next section, but what I will say as the devil's advocate for this right off the bat is that this game isn't chess. Okay, there's more to this game than the thought behind it, right? So I'll get to that later. But the next one is, You cannot react to a missed L cancel in most cases, and the game is played at the higher levels assuming they're going to hit an L cancel, which is very true. Most people play competitive games assuming that their opponent is going to do something that works, or going to, in terms of options, they're going to do something that is good and that works, and they're obviously going to execute that, right? You have to assume that they're going to execute that well so that your counterplay is on point. You can't just play the game in your head doing 50-50s all the time. Oh, what if he misses it? And you're just constantly 50-50ing the neutral and all this other stuff because you're playing around the fact that he could miss it. That's just not something people do. It's too many variables, so you just try to play around the fact that they could do this thing and punish you as hard as possible, and that's how you need to be approaching the game to be successful. And this is for a lot of games. And lastly, and honestly, the point that really I have a hard time figuring out an answer for is hand issues, hand pains. Obviously, this game's a lot like Melee in terms of APM and all of that stuff. So obviously, hand pains are going to be an issue in the long term, right? And that's you already see players dealing with that now. Now, whether or not L canceling is the main culprit, we can just go on and that forever until our faces turn blue. But it's something to think about, right? It's something that even my proposed answer at the end of this video isn't really going to be able to figure out, right? It's just a really tough issue, right? All right, so moving on. Those are the ones. Now, obviously, those aren't all the arguments for auto L canceling. I'm obviously glossing over the ones that I don't really feel are as convincing, or ones you hear most often. But those are the ones that I hear the most, and the ones that are convincing to the most people and to myself at times. Now, moving on to the other point, we're going to do arguments against the addition of auto L cancel, keeping L canceling as a mechanic that the player must do in their matches, right? The first one, to come back to one of the points in the original, or in the first section, is that it buffs technical characters' consistency. Now, I want to clarify, in my notes here, I have buff under quotation marks for a reason, because I don't think it buffs them. I think it increases their consistency. And why I want to bring that up, and my next point, is that missed L cancels, like in the original, like in the 4 auto L cancel section, are, you can't react to them in a neutral setting, right? You're assuming they're going to hit it, so you kind of play the neutral around the fact that if they throw out an aerial, it's going to have a certain amount of lag, and you can't react to the missed flash and try to get a punish off that most of the time. Obviously, there are certain circumstances and some moves that have a ton of lag, but that's the idea. And that's where it comes into the point where that's not where you'll see L canceling and missed L cancels take effect on a match. You won't get directly punished for a missed L cancel most of the time because of that reason, because people aren't playing around the fact that you're going to miss an L cancel, right? What you will see happen, and I'm sure everyone can attest to this, is that you're going to miss punish opportunities because you missed an L cancel during some kind of follow-up, right? If your combo is only so many frames tight, doubling the end lag of one of your aerials is going to most certainly cause you to drop whatever punish you're attempting. So that is where you'll see missed L cancels actually impact matches, right? That's where you'll see punishes being dropped where they shouldn't be being dropped if L cancels are hit. And that's where the buffing technical characters comes into play. It's much more likely for the PK Kid characters or for the Spaceys or for those kind of more technical characters to miss an input like that and drop punishes. Whereas someone like, not to throw these guys under the bus or anything, but Puff players probably aren't going to have that kind of issue. They're not going to miss an L cancel as long as they're more experienced in the game and whatnot. They're not going to miss an L cancel and have them drop the punish because of it. They're going to hit most of those because they have to do them less and they're just less intensive. Therefore, you can focus on those inputs a little bit more. So that is the reason why people have a concern about the game balance, is that those technical characters will be more consistent. Not inherently better. It doesn't obviously increase any of their frame data or anything, but it does make them more consistent, especially in their punish game, right? Especially when that missed L cancels will actually affect your game or their game, right? And the last point I kind of want to go over, because there's not a ton of points that I really like. Most people just kind of want to keep the game the same, which I understand, but you got to have some points to it, is that to go back to the arguments for auto canceling, PM is a game and Melee where mechanics and input consistency is important and should be kept that way and not undermined. And what I mean by that is that, like I said before, these games are not chess, right? The ability to input tough things consistently, quickly, and effectively in the right situations is what makes these kinds of games exciting. And not to say L canceling would inherently do this to the fullest extent, but it is something that would inherently do that. The less APMs in the game, obviously that means the less excitement in some of these inputs that it can be quite difficult at times, right? And while some of the experienced players may not really care much about that because we all do it anyway, newer players and people watching the game who may be unfamiliar and know that that's what's going on will be more impressed by the viewership and all that kind of, more impressed by the gameplay and all that kind of stuff. Basically, not every esport or video game played at a competitive level should be treated like chess, where everything should be a mind game and nothing should be execution heavy. Video games already make it really accessible for people to get into higher levels, unlike regular sports, because you don't need to be born huge or born really muscular or have the ability to become very muscular, right? Not to say you're born muscular, that'd be weird. But, you know, the ability to become strong like that and be 6'5" and be able to have 280 pounds and fucking slug home runs or run at top speed while you truck people in football or whatever, that's not necessary in video games. Video games don't care about what gender you are, how big or small you are, whatever it is. It's about how you approach the game and how much practice you put in, and if your practice is effective and you think about the game in an effective way, which everyone can do. Everyone has the ability to do that. Now, whether you'll be the best or not, that's obviously something we can talk about talent or not, but to just kind of dumb it down, everyone can be good can be at a great level at these games as long as they use their time effectively, think about the game appropriately, and approach the game with a good mindset and practice, obviously, right? Get those inputs down, learn your character, learn your matchups, all that good stuff. So, you know, do we need to not dumb down the game, but do we need to simplify the game input-wise any more than video games already allow us to allow people into the game, right? So, I know that was a little bit hard for me to word, but I think you guys can understand where I'm coming at from that. And so I want to move on from those. Those are the main points for both sides here. And I want to get to my idea that I know a couple people have said that they really like. A couple people say they still would have some issues with it for other reasons. But my ideas here are that most new players for any game, really, at least for the Smash community and the FGC and stuff like that, they come from your locals, not from majors and national tournaments. The reason I say that is because when it comes to your game, there are two kinds of players there to play your game. One, people who actually already play the game, and they paid a bunch of money to get to this tournament, and so this is their main game. They obviously are already a part of the community. And two, people who play another game as their main game, and they're mainly going for that, and they just entered P+ or PM on the side, right? So those people kind of already have their main game. When it comes to getting people to be a PM player, you're going to be doing that at your locals, right? You're going to be getting new players into the game at your locals and getting them interested in really diving into the game at your locals, not at majors where people are already focusing on quote-unquote their main game, and this game is just because they wanted to have some fun, right? Second thing, auto out-cancel is a huge change that could affect top-level play even among the same players and in those final spots that we already witnessed, right? So it could completely change up the game in a way that, while we keep talking about that it doesn't affect top-level play, it very much could. This is a huge change to how the game gets played. There is no way for us to be certain whether or not this would affect those kinds of tournaments. I think it's a huge change. I think this would affect those kind of tournaments and would over time show that certain things end up being better or worse because of it. And the last thing I want to point out is more towards it. ALC is still great for getting new players to try the game and get how it's supposed to feel, because a lot of people play Melee or play PM and they don't know how to out-cancel, or they haven't gotten it in their muscle memory, and they think the game feels sluggish, which when you're not, it can feel that way. Especially Melee. Even for me today, I still feel like Melee gets choppy and sluggish and a little bit tough to control at times. But when auto out-canceling is on, you get to really feel how experienced players feel the game. You get to feel the smoothness and how fast the game can be. Even though you haven't mastered a lot of the other technical stuff yet, you get to still feel how much control that you have in the game and how fast it can be. And it can really drive you to keep the game and keep playing the game and really enjoy it when you wouldn't have before, right? So I get that. So that brings me to my main idea here, which is we should be having auto L cancel on at locals, and maybe even slightly bigger events than that, like regionals or monthlies or things like that, that are really just for the local scene, right? Where your local guys are going to go and just play, and it's not going to be too much of an investment, right? It's not going to be going across the country spending hundreds of dollars, right? It's going to be just stuff that you spend 20 bucks on a Saturday or whatever, and you go to a monthly or whatever, right? I think those we should be having auto L cancel on for the same reasons that most people bring up. it really gets new players to try the game. There's a lot of evidence that it does get new people to try the game, and I'm sure many people will agree with me based on Wombat Wednesdays and other things like that. And even from my own experience, I know I've been keeping out my own experiences and my own experiences TOing and talking to new players in my scene, but that's been my experience too. But on the same token, because of those reasons I said just now, I think it should be off at majors. I think majors should have L canceling be something you have to do. Now, my mindset with that is based on, think about it like this. Baseball is a tough game, right? Especially when you get older and obviously age is something in sports that takes more of an effect than it does in video games. But, when players are more experienced in baseball, the game can be really hard to play. Baseball can be really tough if the other team or the pitchers or the hitters are really experienced at the game, right? They've been playing for a long time. You just get slaughtered. You can't touch anything. You're getting destroyed. You don't even barely know what you're doing. And that's why when kids are getting into the game, they play T-ball. And then when they're done with T-ball, when they get to like 7 or 8, they do some like coach pitch or something. Then when they're finally 9 or 10, they're playing with actual pitchers, but the bases are still shorter, the fields are still smaller, and all of that stuff's still a little easier. And as you get older, you finally get to play real baseball, right? Once you get to around, usually kids start playing actual distance, full field baseball at around 13, 14, or 15. That is where you're finally playing baseball, right? Now, you're still playing against your own age group and all that. You're not playing against pros at this point. That's kind of the glory of video games, is that you can kind of just play pros, right? But you're playing real baseball, in a sense, right? And that's kind of the way I think about it is, auto L cancel is a great way to get new players to try the game and to get them to stick with the game. And also, the idea is I don't like the word gating, but if we make auto L canceling off at majors, it would, if those people who like auto L cancel on and really like PM love the game, they will learn L canceling to go to those tournaments and to perform, right? So it will inherently allow them to want to enjoy the game the way it was quote unquote intended to be played, and therefore it's a good gateway, right? It's a good way to get those new players into the game and to get them to possibly stick with the game long term while still keeping the game how it was kind of designed at the highest levels and at those biggest tournaments where that stuff really matters, right? And that's kind of my point, right? That's kind of how I've been thinking about it for the last 2 years when I've been here in Tallahassee running my own things, seeing new players play the game, stick with the game, and that's kind of the attitude that I've seen from them, and therefore that's kind of the attitude that I have kept for myself, is that these players, they got into the game via auto L canceling. It got them to pick up the game and to play it and to stick with it, but as time went on, they don't really want to keep auto L canceling on anymore. They want to L cancel. They want to turn off that quote unquote handicap that they feel is just kind of training wheels for them. They want to play the game, right? And they wouldn't have done that before, but because auto L canceling gatewayed them into the game, they want to do it, right? And that's kind of the idea I have. Obviously, that doesn't apply to everyone, and this is my own anecdotal experience, but that's kind of where I'm coming from with that. The last thing I want to bring up is that while my point, I think, answers a lot of the questions that I brought up, it doesn't really address the hand issues problem. Since having them on at majors, if you want to take the game seriously, will mean you will have to practice that. And obviously, if you have hand issues, practicing that can be really tough. And doing that for such a long period of time can cause a lot of hand issues. And I do understand that. And that's where the thing becomes really complicated and things become really hard to idealize, right? It becomes really hard to see whether, is L canceling the problem? Because if we turn L canceling on and then those people still have hand problems because PM's just a high APM game almost regardless, that it's not really, then it doesn't really matter, right? So it becomes really hard. And for people who do have hand issues and things like that, I'm not doing this. I'm not saying to use my, I'm thinking about that as I try to come up with the best idea for this. I am really thinking about the hand issues and the things that those people have to try to work around those so that everyone can play the game accessibly and properly without dealing with that kind of stuff, right? And that, so that's been my biggest hurdle. And that's why I kind of want to discuss that with everyone here or on Twitter or whatever, and maybe come up with an answer for that. If there isn't one, I don't really know. Like I said, it's been a big thought point for me when it comes to this discussion and my own thoughts on it. So thank you guys for watching. This has been my discussion on auto L canceling and how I kind of think about it and the points for and against, so you can kind of make your own ideas up and discuss with everyone. I want to keep things as civil as possible. Obviously, I don't want things to get heated. Things get heated on Twitter. I see that. But let's try and keep things as civil as possible. People have good reasons for why they want to do one or the other. The anti-auto cancelers don't hate new players. Obviously, it's their game. They want more people to play it. And pro auto cancel people don't hate the veteran players. Obviously, some of them are veteran players, and they don't obviously hate them, and they kind of understand. They also went through the L canceling thing and having to learn it, so they kind of get it. So I understand all of that. So we should be cognizant of that as we discuss this. But sorry for the video dragging on so long. It's been about 20 minutes now, according to my little recording thing. Once again, thanks guys for tuning in. Please, let's have a healthy discussion on this, and let's try, as a community, let's try to get an answer to this thing, because it's an important discussion, I think, in the community. And yeah, that's about all I have to say. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys later. Take care.